All right.
Let's do it.
So, hey, Tim here, and I'm here with Brendan Mauro, who is now, fortunately, working on Duskers. We're getting him to do some artwork for us. Right up his alley, coming right off Extrasolar, which, if you guys haven't seen it, is basically like kind of like a web-based ARG, kind of, but like, well, you do this.
Oh, I love hearing other
Pitch.
people describe it. Yeah, Extrasolar. It's a game.
It's a game.
Kind of a game. It's a game about exploring another planet, as if you were NASA, but it's
Controlling
not
a
NASA.
drone.
Yes, a drone.
No command line interface.
Yeah, there's no command line. It's all point and click.
Yeah.
It's very streamlined and efficient, and accessible.
Accessible.
That's a good word.
And then you also did Cogs, and this was both with Rob at Lazy 8.
Yes.
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 So
Oh,
Cogs
wow.
is the
That was not
puzzle.
that wasn't a very good description of Extrasolar. The cool thing about Extrasolar is you move your drone around it, and then you get a picture, and the picture that you get back is an actual 3D rendering from that spot on the planet with like a dynamic time of day and everything.
Right.
And it's all done in fancy 3D, high definition-ish.
And that's what gives it that kind of very hyper-real feel.
Yes.
Because it's like there's the transmission delay between now and the other planet, and you're exploring it, and so your feedback is that. Your feedback is basically like, I tell my rover to go here, angle here, and take a picture.
Yeah.
And in like 4 to 8 hours or something like that, you get a snapshot back.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's very pretty. You should go check it out.
yes, definitely. I should see if I was clever, I would have like the link down here and stuff like that. I guess I could do that in the YouTube
Fancy.
video later. Future me, do that.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, just chat them, and I'll try to, since there are two of us, like read them and we'll respond. And in the meantime,
Do something real quick.
you may.
I am, as a former videographer,
Oh, you know
I
what?
was
It's
disturbed
funny.
by the amount of headroom that we had there.
It's funny because when I did the one with Alex, like the
Oh,
beginning
yeah.
of it is tilted way up, and we're like just at the bottom, and then at some point I must have pulled it down because then we're in the middle. And let us know if the volume's okay. If someone could just type and let me know the volume's okay, that would make me feel better. So I guess there's two things we could do. One is we could talk about the stuff that you're doing on Duskers right now, or I could do my typical thing and I could ask you the top 5 interview questions. And I don't know. I find interesting answers come out of those sometimes, or we could do both because we have time.
Uh-huh.
We have an hour.
Are these like your top 5 job interview questions?
Yeah, and you don't so don't answer them like you're trying to interview at a job.
Uh-huh.
Like interview them like as if I'm just asking you these
All right.
questions. But I don't know. I find them kind of interesting. Now that we've talked
Volume,
about
okay,
it, I think we should do it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The top 5 interview questions. Okay.
All right.
We could talk about Duskers later. We could also poll the chat and see which of our 7 viewers would like to. Let's just do the interview.
We're gonna start with the interview because I
Yeah.
find that when I poll the chat, it's like because there's a giant delay.
Oh yeah.
That it's just difficult.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so tell me about yourself.
Well, Mr. Tim Keenan.
I want things. I want to know things.
So that's a pretty open-ended question.
It's super open-ended, and how you answer this,
Uh-huh.
there's going to be a psychological profile later, and we're going to find out if you're like a serial killer or not.
Right. Okay. Well, I haven't killed anybody yet.
So see, now we're right off the bat.
Yeah.
We're going to think you're a serial killer.
Yeah. Well, I.
Tell us about Chico. Tell us about.
Chico?
Tell us about. Oh, you know what's really I think is fun is that you were like when you started out, you were doing valet stuff, and then somehow that turned into a career as
This
an
is true.
artist in
This
games.
is something that we both know Ryan Williams. Nobody on the chat knows Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams brought this up when he
Works
was
at Spry Fox.
Once asked to describe me, he talked about how surprising it is the.
He was asked to describe you.
Yeah,
I want to be
it
asked
was
to
for
describe
a different
people.
video, like kind of like this.
Okay.
It was, and he brought up how surprising it is the variety of jobs that I've had, of positions that I've had
Right.
in my lifetime.
So you would consider yourself to be an artist, right? Like
Yes.
like a game
I
artist.
am a game artist.
modeler,
I have been
texture,
doing
game art.
I've been doing art for video games for the last 7 or 8 years, something like that.
Right.
7, yeah.
If you haven't
started-
seen the menus to Cogs, they're pretty phenomenal.
Everybody loves the menus. If we do Cogs 2, there's going to be really fancy menus.
Cogs
They'll
2, you
be
heard it here
twice
first.
as good.
Put it on the Kotakus.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, I started at, I mean, I was super into, let's see, what was it? A friend of mine was really into Star Trek in 6th grade. This is how this starts.
I like the start of the
And
story.
he liked Star Trek so much that he hand sewed uniforms for all of his friends, including me.
Holy crap.
And we made our own Star Trek videos. We made our own Star Trek
Oh,
Next Generation
like kind of
videos.
like Sweeting, like Star Trek stuff. Like
Like what?
it's like a term when
Okay.
like you do like a low budget version of like
Yeah. It was super low budget. It was like, the family handy cam
Right.
with like VHS tapes and shit.
That-
And no editing whatsoever.
So, do you
It was just,
have
like,
these
fun.
still?
No, I do not have these.
Ah.
But this is how it started was we needed special effects for
Right.
the Star Trek films. And like he had this CD and book that his dad had bought him, which was like how to make computer graphics. And this was like mid 90s. So we're talking like Jurassic Park had like just come out.
Right.
And the majority of what you saw was like, I can make a sphere and it moves around the screen.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, so like I basically took this book and I just like went to town and learned every single thing about True Space 3D, which I think is non-existent at this point. It was like the most budget like 3D software, but it was really cool at the time. It could
Right.
do like meta balls, but it was a demo version, so you couldn't even save your work. And I was working on like
But could you put a video behind it?
a video. I don't think we ever actually got that far. I don't think
Okay,
we ever actually
okay.
got any 3D graphics into the Star Trek videos. This is
Okay.
that's just where it started.
Got it.
And then I was working on like a 486 running Windows 3.1 that was like crashing all the time. So I would work on a scene for like 8 hours, praying the whole time that it wouldn't crash. And then at the very end, I would take a screenshot of what I had made.
Oh, and then show it to your friend.
And then I had proof that I had actually made something because after that point I couldn't save any renders, I couldn't save the files. And
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where it started. I was kind of always into doing art and computers and stuff. My dad was a computer engineer at Slack back in the 70s, working on big IBM mainframes and stuff. So we always had computers around the house, and I learned art. My first ever game credits was, which I am so sad no longer is online because GeoCities has been taken down, was the Star Wars Warcraft 2 Total Conversion Project. I had credits for 2 sprites that I made that ended up in
And they give you credit.
and I had a credit on the website.
You know what? This is what's awesome about games because it's like, in a way, like when I was in film, like to get a credit, like they had to pay for the reels of film.
Right.
And the credits were long at the end.
Right.
And so like you'll see like special effects houses like when you watch like The Matrix or something, there's like a clump of like 1,000 names and like one blob that goes
Right,
up.
right.
And that's only like 3 people from each effects house when there
Right.
were like 20 that worked on it.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of like, unless you had worked on the film for over 3 months, that was kind of the cutoff for us anyway.
Uh-huh.
And we were really generous about it and gave everybody time and stuff, but so that's awesome that 2 sprites and you got the credit.
Yeah.
'Cause it doesn't
Well,
cost for
it
the
was-
extra
It
bits,
was just
right?
HTML.
Yeah.
At that point, just like extra
Bam,
line.
living the life.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Way down near the bottom of the page. Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty great. And then so that kind of got me into mods, and I was always doing stuff for mods. Nothing, never actually made anything worthwhile, but learned all the tools, learned how games worked more or less, and then I went to Chico State, and I got an animation degree, and it was kind of cool because it didn't actually become a degree until I was a junior, because it was just like the idea of teaching computer graphics was completely brand new at this point.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing was a special major, which was really cool because even though there were only like 3 classes at the university that were computer animation or computer graphics classes, in order to make the rest of the major, they sent me out to all the different colleges and stuff. So I, took
Whoa.
a bunch of like graphic design classes,
That's
video
pretty cool.
classes. I took a theater lighting class, like pretty much anything they could come up with that was related
Right.
to computer graphics that would,
Yeah.
hopefully give you some some
And
edge
that's
of what
really
an actual-
interesting
Yeah.
because stuff as simple as like key fill, like with lighting and stuff like
Right.
that for sets,
Mhm.
like computer graphics is arguably lighting, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so
it's
it
the
was-
study of light.
Yeah, so it was a lot of related stuff, and it was. I actually am really glad that turned out this way because it kind of turned me into a generalist,
Right.
where I can do a lot of things, which is why I've been working on indie games pretty much
Yeah.
ever since I got into the industry. Is because I bring a huge skill set.
Right.
And when you can only afford to hire one artist for a project, it's really I think it's nice to have somebody who can do animation and make trailers for your game. I can do music, I can do sound, I can do pretty much everything.
Yeah. When I started with the virus named Tom, I was definitely coming from like DreamWorks, and so I was definitely thinking like I want to get this person that's really good at this specialty, right? So we had like so many people that would just work for a second on the game, and it was managing all that was really tough because at DreamWorks when you have this management structure, when you're an indie, that's you, right? And so exactly. So like with Duskers, it's definitely been like instead of having like the concept artist and the the UI person and all this stuff, and plus I can't get my wife to do it a second time around. Have a kid, make my game, have a full-time job.
Holly.
Seriously, Holly. But so to have that, like in that, Jill at first, because she was kind of a jack of all trades, and you were a jack of all trades, and it's so much nice to have the art department as like a person. So like if you just don't get hit by a bus or anything like that.
I'll try my best.
Thank you.
I can't make any promises.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. So, what do you think is your greatest weakness?
Can I get a drink of water real quick?
No. Yes. You may. I will dance.
Greatest weakness.
Coming next is Brendan Mauro describes what his greatest weakness is. Well, this is where we show an ad and we get a lot of money.
Yeah. Why do I want to talk about greatest?
You know what? That's the funny thing. Like usually when I used to do this, like when I go on an interview, the classic thing to say is like, well, gee, Willikers, I just work too hard sometimes, and I put myself too much into a project.
That's actually what I was
But no. Give us like a for reals weakness.
I mean, I am a perfectionist,
right?
Which I think is a weakness for sure.
Two indies.
Hello.
Double fine.
Yeah, often I probably get too carried away with small details when the budget is trickling low and time
hard not to do. Not to do. I mean, I think that
I take pride in my work.
Yeah, and that's a thing. And I think that's also sort of the job of anyone that's art directing or anybody that's paying, right? Is to watch out for that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's definitely I mean, I think we all, to a degree, I think if you're in love with the game that you're making, like, you're going to do that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm definitely, like, one to go over budget and out of scope and stuff like that, and, like, adding features. Actually, that was one of the real big lessons, I think, with a virus named Tom, coming from a place where I had the budget and I had the manpower and the time, and, like, even making that small of a game, it still exploded out. And eventually, much to a lot of people's dismay, like we ended up cutting things, like we didn't do online and we didn't do the level editor and stuff like that, and
but the game looked beautiful.
Thank you.
At the end of the day.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the thing is that we're going to spend way less time on every aspect of Duskers, and it's a bigger game. So we'll see at the end of this if it's as polished as Virus named Tom. But I think it's gonna come along because it's got such a stylized look.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. What did you like least about your last or current job? What do you like? And this is kind of interesting, I think, for not only other indie devs, but then people that are aspiring indie devs. It's good to talk about like the things you don't like, and it might be particular to you, or it might be something that like every indie relates to. You know.
We could talk about the last real job I had, which lasted a week.
You could do that, but I personally think it's more interesting to say, hey,
of my most recent job.
Here's this job that I love, which is just being an artist on indie games. Yeah. Right. And what is the part of that that sucks the most?
I think the hardest part about being indie is the inconsistency. Yeah. Especially when it comes to stuff like hours and budget and
money,
stuff. And just
affording a living and stuff like that.
Yeah, just not being able to like sit down at the beginning of the year. Like, it's 2015. I have no idea how much money is going to be in my bank account at the end of 2015.
Right.
Because whatever projects you're on could go over budget and need to cut your hours or stuff like that, and just
Yeah. That's definitely tough.
I think that's
I found that I talked to some people because I had some friends that like got laid off from a full-time job recently, and it was interesting to me because I always feel like you're trading your sort of stress, right? Like as an indie developer, I feel like every day I've got like a little bit of that like where is the money going to come from stress, and like, am I going to be able to keep doing this stress?
Right.
But if the day comes where I run into that wall, it's like I've seen it coming for a while.
Right.
Whereas like when I had a full-time job, I didn't have to deal with that stress every day.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, when a movie didn't do well, or when they did a round of layoffs or whatever, if you were a part of that, or even if you weren't and you just heard it was going around, that brick wall was just suddenly in front of your face.
Right,
And
right.
it was incredibly stressful.
Right, it's a morale killer.
Yeah, so it's like, I find that like, it's interesting, it's like a trade-off. It's like a stress trade-off where like, do you want it like evenly distributed, like across?
Right.
Or do you want it to just spike suddenly?
Yeah.
And I can see people that would like it both ways.
Yeah.
I kind of, I don't know, I can see the positives of
It's
both.
like the stress comes in different flavors.
Yes.
It's like, there's definitely, I've worked big jobs before where the stress was like dealing with the manager and, having them, complain if you're not coming in on time.
Yeah.
Bullshit like that I didn't care about. And then, like, I love having the freedom of an indie, of, being able to say like, hey, I really need to take a break and
Right.
go to the mountains for 3 days.
Yeah.
And, and then you have the freedom to do that and no one's going to suffer for it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really a mixed bag. It's really
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting, and I had never really thought about it too much
Yeah.
until like I was talking to some friends recently.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Jeez, man.
This is the one. This is the.
Sitting atop a golden throne.
That would be cool.
Surrounded by the skulls of my enemies.
Yes.
I don't know. I'd like to
So
own
in
a house.
2020.
2020. Yeah, that's hard. I may not be in indie at that point. I think it depends on how the indie scene goes.
Yeah, the indie scene.
Because
People talked for a while, or recently, I guess maybe like a year ago, about the
Yeah.
indie bubble bursting.
Yeah.
Because there was this influx of all this amazing indiness,
Mm-hmm.
and like then everybody jumped on the ship, and a lot of people had already jumped on the ship, but even more.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden you start to get marketplaces that felt like they were a little bit more safe and a little bit more curated, and then
Yeah.
you've got and like the App Store just blows up, and then you've got Steam, which all of a sudden there's just a lot more games on. A lot
Yeah.
of major publishers are targeting it more, right?
Yeah.
Like PC gaming, which
Yeah.
was kind of like this nice little niche that you could, not a niche, but I guess just like a sort of a
it's been dependable, I think.
dependable
Yeah,
area.
PC gaming, yeah.
Though on the other hand, like console games, consoles I feel are much more indie friendly.
They are definitely
to an
getting more
extent.
indie friendly. Yeah.
And and so they're trying to work with you in those ways. So that's good. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely
it's a tough time.
it's a tough time.
And because there's a lot of saturation. There's
There
market
is.
saturation.
There is.
Using special terms.
Yeah.
Market saturation.
Market
There's too many good
saturation.
games out there, and nobody
Yeah.
has time to play them all, and so
Yeah.
it's harder to make a living.
And I find like
Indie
I
to
always
get an
saw that
audience.
even in games, but now I'm
Mhm.
seeing that even in like other aspects, right? Like YouTube, for example. Like I'll
Mhm.
post this video on YouTube later, and I feel like before when I was making, and maybe it's different, but when I was making like the beta update videos for a very same time, now it was much closer to launching.
Yeah.
But we would get a lot of views on those.
Yeah.
And now I feel like when I make videos, I get way fewer views, and I was like, why is this stuff not interesting? And then all of a sudden, like people were like, well, there's like a billion, like there's a billion YouTubers that are all streaming games that are
Yeah,
out that you can play right now that you're
com-
competing with,
Yeah,
right?
you're competing with people whose
Yeah.
job, who make a living on YouTube
Right.
just by posting videos.
Exactly, and I don't want
That's
to
all they
take
do for 8
I don't
hours
want
a
to
day.
take away from them either
Right.
because this isn't like I'm hopefully going to sell a game to make money, and
Yeah.
this is just fun to do. But at the same point in time, it is interesting that it's just like in all aspects of being an indie dev. It's not just like selling the game. It's also in being able to secure that contract, being able to promote your game, or just being able to talk about anything out there.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's why you got to have big headliners on your interview show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I went on the Tim Keenan show.
You did, man.
Misfits Attic.
So I guess so in 5 years it's questionable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always it's funny. I always say almost every year I'm like this is a make or break year for my
Right.
indie career.
Right.
And instead of
So
like
true.
I think the way that Hollywood prefer it is like kind of shit or get off the pot. It's
Mm-hmm.
like either we make enough money that it's like we can not comfortable, we're not living lavishly, but like it's like we can support our games, right? Or we just fail. And like we make no money. It's like guess what? We gotta get a day job. And she knows that I'll still probably do it on the side and stuff like that.
Yep.
But and then I think what happens is we always maintain here. It's always like, well, that did well enough to keep us afloat for another 3 or 6 months. And then it's like by the time that 6 months is up and we're right about to go, it's like, oh, we found something, you know, like, oh, we were in a Humble Bundle, or, oh, you know what, like, we're going out on Vita, or, oh, you know what, like, we got funded by a bunch of indies, and that's like a charmed life, like, almost, but it's just barely making it by.
This kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is the inconsistency.
Yes, this is like up and down.
Yeah.
You get kind of dulled to it, I think.
Yeah.
After a while, it's still stressful, but now I'm like, if I was running out of money in 3 months, I'd be more like, I wouldn't be like running around like a crazy.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it'll work out.
Yeah, it'll work out or it won't, and I'm tired of worried about it, so I'm just gonna keep making my games.
Yeah, I think was something you said that I think is true, is that in 5 years I think I will still be making games, even if it's not my job.
Right, but you might not be
maybe
doing it full time.
Yeah, you know.
And it's a
some
big difference.
evenings, playing around with Unity.
Yeah, because if I was doing what I was doing when I was at DreamWorks.
Yeah.
As technically, I'm not supposed to say that because of my contracts and crap. But who cares? Like I was working on games on the side, right? And that was tough.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a wife and kid and stuff like that. It's like you're taking time away from that.
Yeah.
You know. And so like I almost feel that even though my life is tough because it's like I'm not making as much money. I feel it's almost easier than a lot of friends that I have or people that I see out there that are doing it in their spare time, because it's just, you know, you're done with your day job, you come home, you're kind of exhausted, and then you're like boot up the computer and keep going, right?
Yeah, I'm usually creatively drained when I get home. I don't want to turn on the computer.
Exactly. I almost have an aversion to my laptop.
Yeah.
Like I literally just playing on the TV versus playing on my laptop is a mental difference, because I'm like, there's no email here, there's no like, this isn't the thing that I work on, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So tell me about a time you failed.
Ooh. About a time I failed. That's a good question. I mean, this could be anything. This could be like girls.
Yeah.
That I didn't
this could be
make out
anything.
with
Yes.
or
That
something.
could very much that. I'm sure that never happened to you. I have
No,
experiences
never,
like that.
no.
Don't tell Holly, but
Yeah.
you know, that didn't I wasn't always as smooth as I am now.
Yeah. Well, there's Extrasolar, which is not a financial success.
Yes.
Which
Puts
kind
it
of
pretty much with like 99% of indie games.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the most recent.
Right.
Of things but it's hard to consider I mean, the game itself is not a failure.
Right.
The game is a critical success.
Right.
It's received numerous awards at this point, or nominations for awards at least. We've got some.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful game. Like every time I still go over to Lazy 8 a couple days a week, and I walk in and I'll see photos being rendered on one of the servers that we have in the office, and every time I walk in and see that, I'm just like, that's a beautiful game.
Right.
Like I put 4 years of my life into that, and that's a beautiful game, and that's awesome. But it's also kind of sad that
And it's one of those things that I think that like nobody ever prepared me for like the post-launch depression, which sounds so dumb when you say it, and it seemed like when someone had mentioned it, I think they mentioned it in Indie Game the Movie, and like people had sort of mentioned it. I think Pete had mentioned it to me one time. He was like, "Oh, that's a thing," and I was just like, and I think for the first couple weeks after launch, like I didn't have that because I was so busy trying to push press and all that stuff that it didn't catch up.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's
like a month or two.
Yeah, it's like I had spent like 4 years, like because I was working part time and stuff like that on my first game, and then all of a sudden I just dipped down, and it was just like because there's so much build up and you spend so much time, and I feel like no matter what, it would be depressing if I like spent 3 months on a smaller game, like on a mobile title. Not that all mobile titles are 3 months or anything like that, but if I spent a less of time, then I would feel like maybe I would bounce back faster, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe you just feel that much more often.
I mean,
like
you have such an expectation.
you do.
Like
you've put so much into this.
Right, and you're like, surely I've put so much into this. Like, it deserves to be successful. And like, even with Extrasolar, it's such a new concept. It's super risky, and we knew from the start that it was going to be super risky, and it was going to be a hard sell regardless. And we're like, there is a super high chance that this game is not going to make any money. Yeah, which ended up being true, but secretly, everybody was hoping,
and you
that
have
it was going to be the breakout
success. I feel like it was almost like, I think at one point when I was talking to Holly when we were first starting our stuff, I was like, I think, because I had friends that would like go off and start making indie games, and they'd have so much confidence, and I was like, and Holly's so pragmatic, and she was like, odds are you're not going to succeed. Like, there's a million people trying to do it. You might have a marginal amount of success, but it's your first game, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I honestly feel that unless you are overly optimistic or arrogant or crazy, like, you will not complete an independent video game. Because it's like, who's going to be like, I'm going to spend all this time and I'll probably get, like, minimum wage at best for that time, and probably not even like, that's just not like a rational thought process. So I feel like you have to have that kind of like, you know, my band is gonna make it kind of thing.
I'm gonna be that 1%.
I'm gonna be that
John Blow.
Right. Yeah. And if you you have to sort of have that mentality. I mean, a lot of people would probably argue that they want to make the game anyway, and so
which is true.
Come hell or high water.
It is true.
Holly attributes it to like an addiction, which I don't think is far off, right? Because it's always like the next one. I just need one more game.
I am stoked that I get paid to make video games.
Right, yeah.
That I am able to do this and make money from it.
It's amazing, right, to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many people can say that not only are they getting paid money to make video games, but video games they want to work on.
Yes.
Because I was getting paid to make video games like early in my career. And they weren't bad video games, but they weren't my video games, or they weren't like such a small team that like I picked that game because I liked it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not quite as exciting.
It's pretty amazing to be able to do that. And that's the thing is that like this game for Duskers, for the first time, it's not like my savings. It's other people's savings, which is kind of scary in a different way. But it's also just like that's amazing. It's like right now, that like
other people felt.
Yeah. Not only that they felt and they supported this game.
Yeah.
Right. But then in addition to that, like, and that's amazing in itself and blew my mind. But then in addition that, like, I am right now, like, I think, like, sometimes, you know, Holly will be like, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I'll stop and I'll be like, I could either be really stressed out right now because I want to make them back their money and I want this game to be awesome and all that stuff. Or I could stop and just look at this point in time and be like, right now, I'm getting paid to make my own video game, right? And, like, that's amazing. Yeah. And we're sitting in, like, Double Fine is letting us use like some office space, and you know, like there's this awesome indie culture around here. So it's like, it's because when you're in the moment, you're all stressed out, and then like, you know, 5 years from now, you'll look back and be like, remember when we were working on that game and like we, you know, didn't know if it was gonna do any good and all this stuff, but like we were in the, you know, it was like we were doing it. Like, so I try to be cognizant of that now if I can. Yeah. But it's tough.
Trust in the trust that people apparently have in us.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like even if everything completely like lights on fire and like smashes into the wall, like you gave it a shot and it was a pretty fun ride, right? I think that's the biggest thing.
I think that's exactly what Colin and Ron and everybody wants to hear right now.
Like, watching this, they're like, pull the plug.
Fuck it.
But at the same point in time, I feel like so many times in life, like right now, like Haley's like 3, right? Yeah. And she's awesome. But there's a lot of stressors that go along with that. And I feel that, like, I know that when I look back, I mean, it'd be like look at pictures and stuff and be like, those were awesome years. Yeah. So it's like, I try to take a step back and look at that right now and be like, I'm in the middle of that. Like, my daughter is going to not want to hang around with me in the future. And she is not going to want to play with me, you know? So it's like, right now, even if she's annoying about it, it's like, dude, she wants to, like, put together a puzzle with me. Yeah. Like, that's pretty fucking awesome. Yeah. You know? And otherwise, I wouldn't know who Twilight Sparkle was, or Pinkie Pie, or Fluttershy. These would not be names in my vocabulary.
Right. Yeah, you're a better person for it.
I think I am.
For knowing who Fluttershy is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, she's a great pony. Yeah, so, okay, so do you want to, let's see. Yeah. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Yeah. I've lost the window here.
Do we have any viewers?
I have to click on this OK button, or else Google will not let me. We've increased in viewers.
9 viewers.
Awesome. But they're very quiet viewers. Yeah. And then on Twitter, we got retweeted. So, so if you guys have questions, then throw them in. But we could also show some Duskers out.
Should we talk about Duskers?
We should.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do this without, like, completely obscuring our beautiful faces. Bam! Whoops. That's not it. How about that?
That works.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
we want to talk about, I mean, this is the most recent one. So
yeah.
Everything past this is going to look worse because we're going to go back in time, right?
Yeah. Whatever the file names are when I hit left and right.
Okay.
So, like, yeah, this is going back in time, right?
Okay.
So Real quick for everybody, can they see my mouse? I guess they can.
Yeah.
So this is like a solar system view. In the game, there's a galaxy view, there's a universe view, and there's a solar system view. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, I guess, and maybe you could talk about this. I guess I'll just talk about the real brief overview. Is that one of the things I wanted with this is we definitely want this old school vibe. I used to have a really cool name for it back when I was thinking about it a lot, and I can't remember it. But it's kind of like this sort of 80s look, like back when, you know, things were more command line and tech. I want the feeling that tech breaks down and it's not so good. Really Alien, when you think about the movie Alien or Moon or something like that. Yeah. And then the other thing that we definitely wanted was just the sense of old tech, but very sci-fi. Right? Yeah. So if you want to talk about any of this stuff, retro sci-fi.
Yeah. There is a name for that era of sci-fi.
You know what? I kind of made one up that I was in love with, and I can't remember what it was. And it was something about, like, because Holly was looking, because we were trying to think of this name, because I was like, how do I describe this look? Because I wanted to say lo-fi.
Yeah.
Right? But that's like an odd, everyone always associates that with audio, right? And so I wanted something like that.
It kind of works.
It's kind of a lo-fi, like
lo-fi
visual
sci-fi.
look. And then we came up with this word that really encapsulated it. It was like, you know, we combined two words, and it was super clever. And I'm older now, so I don't remember these things. Anyway, so why don't you talk a little bit about what you were doing?
It's funny
here.
you bring up Aliens, because this is pretty much the latest, as we saw, latest iteration of a bunch of concepts, and it was right after I watched Aliens that I made this, and it was basically looking at all the cool old school monitors and vector graphics and CRTs and Aliens, and being like, you know, how do we capture that feel? Part of that was making it blue. I don't think we've really settled on a color scheme for the interface yet.
No, not
so
yet.
I've just been trying different ideas.
Right.
Making everything blue and like kind of blown out.
Yeah, the scan lines and the bloom are really a big thing here, because you get that monitor glow.
Yeah.
One of the things that you did that I fell in love with was this. Like, if you guys look at this, like, what the hell is this? It's a walkie-talkie with a superscript, right? That's what this is. And when I saw that, I was in love with it, because when you look at some of the old school shit, it's like, that made sense to someone somewhere, some engineer that like created an icon for this thing. And it seems extra sciencey because it's got a superscript.
Yeah.
But like, I kind of love when I play games and I see an image or an icon or something like that that's distinguishable. Like, every fucking time I see this, I am now going to think Trade Station.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Right.
But it's not like a logical mapping.
Right.
Right? And then Brendan did come up with a version of this where these two were arrows, and this is a trade station, and it started to make way more sense. And like, normally I think a graphic artist or someone that was into iconography would be like, that's much cleaner and clearer. But I like that level of indirection that you get with this, where you're like, it's kind of like when you looked at Star Wars. Like, when I first saw the X-Wing, I was like, what the? Because like, I was like, a spaceship is this sexy, sleek thing in the future, right? And this thing looks like the Winnebago,
all over the
and
place.
It's ugly. And then all of a sudden, as a kid, like, I sat down and I realized, like, and maybe what I should do is maybe I should move this a little bit so that people can see our face, because it seems weird that we're like talking and so maybe I can just like do this a little bit or something. But it was really weird.
Now we can't see what we're talking. Whatever.
Yeah, but it was really weird that, and I hope that update's live. Anyway,
We'll find out.
We'll find out. But it was really weird, and all of a sudden I thought about it. I was like, when I go on the highway, like, everything isn't like, you know, the latest model year car.
Right.
Right? It's like, there are lots of cars from like 20 years ago that are barely running, right?
Yeah, like my car.
Yeah. And so like, when I looked at Star Wars, I was like, this is a rebellion, and they're just scrapping things together, and it doesn't have to look pretty, and this is probably old tech for them. And it was also, unlike Star Trek was clearly like, take our line and this is the future.
Right.
And I felt like Star Wars was very much like, this is a different future.
Right.
Which just kind of blew me away, and they had different weird things, and all of those little details.
A different past and a different future.
Yeah, and so all those details kind of like got my gears grinding. So like, this is a lot to talk about for just one little icon, but like that's what I kind of loved about that.
I'm glad that you like it.
Yeah, and then I also absolutely love this arc, this orbit arc, which probably in the game we wanted to make it so that all the spaceships were drifting, and these actually made sense. But that's going to be way too much effort for our little game.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to be complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's just cool because it's like that thing exists in a world, and this computer would probably give a crap about its orbit so that we could calculate a trajectory so that we could intercept it, and that's just cool. That just makes happiness happier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scientifically literate part of my brain kind of goes a little when I see this, because there's orbit lines and trajectories going all over the place, and if there is some center of mass in this solar system, then everything would be orbiting around it. And
Right. Yeah.
not in these random trajectories, but I kind of like the way it looks.
Right.
And so the artist in me is totally down with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good enough, right?
Yeah.
And then what else we got here? Hold on. Let me go
Go back in time.
forward
here
in
we go.
time.
Oh,
Look at
drone
this.
alternates.
Drones.
Yeah, we were talking. This kind of started because we were talking about how the current drone shape kind of tapers to a point in the back, and people tend to think that that's an arrow, and
Right.
that that's actually the front.
Let me see if I can pull up a
current screenshot.
yeah, a current screenshot of the game for people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we.
There's stuff in there that you.
Oh, you know what? Here, actually, I can go to the little. I think in here you have.
Yeah,
okay.
there we go. Yeah.
So this is a little thing we made for Christmas.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see that the drone that Jill made originally, we put the headlight in the front, but it's got this point in the back, and everyone who plays it at first wants to drive this way because there's a big effing arrow that's going this way.
Yeah.
And the drone rotates, but the number doesn't rotate, which feels cool to me because it's like it's that gyroscopic kind of motion, and I like it. But yeah, so I was like, we need a couple. Not only that, but you want to give the drones personality eventually.
Yeah.
They all have names.
We have multiple drone types in the game itself.
Yeah, so we wanted to start having them feel like they had different personalities. And so I was like, hey, just come up with a bunch of different designs. And so these are a bunch of those designs.
Yep.
And eventually it would be kind of cool if the game had like a logo. Like we have the Duskers logo, which is just the name and type and stuff like that. But it would be cool if we ever made, I don't know, team T-shirts or something like that, to have some little, and iconography, maybe an icon for the game, stuff like that, to have one of these be very, I don't know, like a silhouette that's distinguishable that you'd be like, that's Duskers.
Each person could have a different drone on their shirt.
They
that
could.
worked on the game.
They could. Then we'd have to print a bunch of shirts.
That probably.
But that would be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and so basically, also this square one, we were deciding was just kind of like this base one because it's very much like looks like a drone and it's very clear. And then
kind of a clunky 1980s look to it.
Yeah, it does, especially with this like kind of like tube in the front. That reminds me of like almost like an old school CRT with like the bent screen and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's what those are.
Yeah. Kind of riffing on those ideas now for newer ones.
Right. Yeah. And it's cool. I did like the even though they start to look like puppies.
Yeah.
But these little antenna off the back, just little things that like make you think that these things actually function. Like these actually have a thing. And what we're gonna do, if anybody has seen the gameplay, what we're probably gonna do is right now, like you see how this light comes off of it. So this is an overlay. Everything that you see in neon here is an overlay that the computer is saying. It's like computer vision where it's like this is where the drone is, but the drone is actually there. So what we want to do is we want to put some geometry in there that, if another drone cast light on it, that you'd see something underneath the overlay. And then I also want to jostle the light when you're driving over things and stuff like that so that it reminds you, and this won't jostle.
Yeah.
So I think right now when people play the game, they don't know that these are overlays because, there's no juxtaposition there. There's nothing breaking your brain. But when you see this light bouncing and you don't see this bouncing, but you might see like light reflecting off of this thing underneath that's bouncing, you're like, oh, this is a visualization.
Yeah.
The computer is telling me this, and this is the real world. And that's what I think will hopefully get this creepy effect where when you see these things in the dark, these glowing things, you're like, yeah, that's there, but that doesn't mean I can see all the way over there. Like there might be an alien that's coming and I can't see it because it's not in my light.
Yeah.
And that will hopefully create this sense of what the fuck, right? Like this creepy sense, and hopefully we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Brendan also did this, which was a cute little thing. I was like,
Tim's favorite thing ever.
It is, and it's like I was like, hey, you know what? We're gonna try to give. So we just gave the the alpha. we just gave the alpha of the game out to anybody who's pre-ordered, and I wanted to do it before the holidays. And so I was like, and you always find, things the computer vision recognizes and it flickers on, and I was like, oh, let's replace that with a little present. Wouldn't that be adorable? No. And it was, and we're totally gonna reuse that next year.
For Christmas.
Yes. Hopefully we'll be out.
Yeah.
So this is
all right. Now we're going back in time.
Past revisions of. Oh, this is the galaxy map.
Yes.
Right. So in the galaxy map, instead of seeing derelict ships and trading stations, you actually see different solar systems, which we're probably going to change to be more scientifically accurate.
Right.
This would be a star cluster rather than a galaxy.
Yeah.
And then the whole shebang will probably end up being a galaxy instead of being the universe.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I do like the kind of the very polygonal web in this that has a cool vibe to it.
I was going for kind of Star Trek Generations with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has that feel, which is cool.
The Stellarium.
Yeah, that there's kind of some geometric mapping to this 3D space because we have a very very 2D space. It would be cool if it was 3D, and you could zoom through it and stuff like that. But indie games, indie games and budgets and stuff.
Yeah.
This is
more riffing on ideas for.
Right, this is Sean Colombo getting to you with a little bit of Hive here. This is a little cross promotion.
I don't know where that came from actually.
The Hex.
Yeah.
You were playing too many RTSs or turn-based strategy games actually.
Been playing some Civ 5.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Oh, this is the very first concept I did for you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This is back in the day when it was like we just had started the game. Or no, we had done the GDC pass of the way the game looks right now.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, let's play with shadows. Let's play with what a room might look like. And so, you created this thing, which is like, what the... And this is... Yeah. What I wanted was definitely like shadow interplay and like, what the hell is this thing? Yeah. Like, it's clearly a thing. It looks like a giant fucking crab spider that's going to kill me, but it's really an engine part, but I don't know what it does. Yeah. And that's what I wanted. Now... Yeah, the only thing about this is that, of course, like, as you guys see with the current version of the game, I want this to be way more obscured and not be able to tell what's in it. And then I also have a fear of putting things in the middle of the room that you'll have to steer around or we'll have to incorporate into our kind of... Because we have auto navigation with the drones and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's a valid fear, because I do think it would be interesting to, like, scoot in behind this thing, Yeah. Or if that played to some strategy, like you go back here and you put your Gatling gun this way and another one this way or something like that. But for the scope of game, I don't know if we'll be able to do it.
And there's still ways around it. Like we've talked in the past about maybe the drones are actually like flying. They don't have treads. Right. And they can hover around a room, and then they can just go over things, and you can still get the cool shadows. Or we could, have things recessed into the floor. So you still get, some cool
sense. I do like the idea of things recessed into the floor, because then that would also super motivate that little, that stupid thing I want to do with the drone light, where it bounces around and stuff like that.
I think that would be cool.
Yeah. We also want to eventually, just so that people know, I don't know if we'll get to it, but like we want to have crap floating through the air. Yes. Because some of the earlier concepts look very much like you were underwater in a Titanic, and Jill threw some of that stuff in there, and I was like, that's awesome, because you get these false positives, like these, like you get a little red rectangle. If you play the game, means shit. Like that means this drone is probably going to die. So you don't want to get to this state. But if like some piece of crud was floating through the air and the computer for a second thought it was an enemy and then like glitched out and said like whoops, it would just kind of give the player a quick heart attack, which would just be fun because I'm a sadist.
So now we're progressing in time.
Oh, were we going backwards? Oh, we're going forwards.
We're going forwards in time.
Right. So now we're trying to figure out how we're going to do these doors. And I love stuff like this D7, this D12 worked into the environment. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think with the current setup, like details like that just aren't even going to come through.
Yeah. So. Yeah, because it's so obscured. Yeah. This is such a clear picture of what's going on. Yeah. And that's another thing that's always up for debate. And I don't know if we'll ever solve it. Like, is this just a scientific, this is just a visualization, or is there actually some camera that you're looking through?
Right, some
Because
video feed.
as soon as we added like some of the static and stuff, it looks so much like a video feed,
Right.
which makes no sense,
Yeah.
but who cares? But I always pictured it as this is a visualization because the drone is scanning the room and
Right.
you're looking at that
You're
process
getting,
data.
like, 3D data
Yeah.
from the room. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is cool. Yeah.
Right.
Let's see.
More of
along
that.
those lines, ideas that we didn't
Ideas
like,
with hard buttons here,
Yeah.
which I love the idea of,
but didn't really fit.
but it doesn't really fit because I feel that everything, I've got this weird thing that this thing that you're looking at is your monitor. So like if you're playing the game on a laptop, you are in a physical space and like this is your monitor. So having physical buttons like this, well, I want them to be in the room with you like that. And so maybe we could have like a red like glare on the screen.
Right.
And then also, like, if you notice right now, and we have, like, zero sound design in, but when radiation floods, there's this bell. It's like a physical bell that rings, like
Oh,
a
yeah?
school bell. Yeah. And so that's weird because everything else is kind of digital, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just
I
feel
like
that you're in this room, and, like, something, when crap hits the fan, there might be a physical thing in there with you, you know, and there's, like, a bell that goes off,
I
you know?
did not recognize the bell. I like that.
Yeah. So when radiation floods, listen, when radiation floods, there's like a bell, like a school
Right.
bell
Like your,
that like rings.
Your console is
Yeah.
like this is bad.
Yeah, because everything on the console is digital. It's like a digital watch. It's like, you know?
Yeah.
But that one with the radiation, that's more like you're in a firehouse or something
I
like that.
I love it.
Yeah. Playing around with stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, this is when we were messing with ideas of power on and power off.
Oh, right. So this
you
is this
toggle
and this,
between the
right.
two, Yeah.
So one thing that right now, if you guys notice, I don't know if any of you guys have watched the videos of the game or whatever, but we have that when you're out in the schematic view, you can see if a room is powered or not, but when you're in the game itself, you can't. And I kind of love that you need to use both views, and I love that they don't give you all the data you need. However, it is also nice when you're affecting things and you can see that in the environment.
Yeah.
And so we were like, wouldn't it be cool if when you're going through a room, you can tell if it's powered or not. It's not powered like the lights are all on. It's powered like, okay, the subsystems like are functioning and like their little floor LEDs or this monitor that you can see here is on.
Yeah.
And maybe flickering or something like
Yeah.
that. And it really gives you that sense of, I am awakening this kind of dead giant
Yeah.
of a ship that I'm in,
Yeah.
and what's going on with it.
I
right?
was really inspired by the inspiration for this came from I saw a picture of the International Space Station and it was nighttime and they'd shut all the lights off so they could sleep, but all the computers were still on.
Oh.
And there was just banks of panels
Right.
on floor, ceiling, you know,
Right.
everything. There was just all these tiny little LEDs and I was like, oh, that looks so cool. And
Right.
I'd love to have something like that in the game.
Yes. Yeah. So we've got, clearly you need to sell a peripheral along with the game that has those buttons. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So what's really funny is I
Has an
actually
actual
bought,
bell on it. That'd be awesome.
so I bought a mechanical keyboard from the guys upstairs when they were moving out. And I was like, I bought it simply, and I haven't done it yet, but simply so that when I demoed the game, people could play on a mechanical keyboard. And to me, I used to play games on not only my dad's old IBM, but like my friend's dad had a Tandy, and like they had those buttons
yeah.
that just clicked,
The
you
solid
know?
click,
Yeah, the
yes.
solid clicks.
Chunk,
And it
chunk,
totally
chunk.
reminds me of playing like Battle Chess or Carmen Sandiego or whatever the heck we were playing back then. And it just feels really cool. And so that's a part of the game that is cool.
Yeah.
And Matt saying great sound things to be done. Yes, like we have not touched sound. I have a little meter
Sound
on the
design is gonna
bottom.
be-
Sound
gonna
design
be
is going to be
critical.
really critical in this
this
game
game.
because we're going to be really minimalist on the visuals just because you can't see so much.
Yeah.
And then imagine this, like what I want is I want mics on the drones. So now this is kind of complicated. Like I don't know. I'm not a genius audio guy, but it seems complicated that like 90% of the sounds are going to be already passed through a filter, right? They're going to come through a shitty mic, and then you're going to hear them, right? And then you also hopefully have the ambient sound of your ship and like the bell that might go off or whatever that reminds you that you're sitting in front of a computer monitor. And then everything that you hear, and hopefully we can fuck with you, right? Like we can make sounds that might sound like the alien thing, or if you bring the drone up to the edge of a door, like you might be able to hear something, but you're like, is that an engine?
Scritch, scritch.
Or is that like something moving?
Yeah.
It sounds regular, so it's probably an engine sound, but it could be something in there. And then you can do things like, I've thought about, like, maybe certain aliens or enemies, like, make your monitor flicker, and you're like, or make the drone signal weak, and you're like, oh, it's nearby, but I don't know exactly where it is. And the same thing with audio cues, right? Like, you could hear it going through the vents or something like that. Yeah,
I love it.
I'm really excited about that, and we have done, like, 0 work on that so far.
Yeah. To come.
So we'll just get Matt.
Things to come.
We'll just get Matt to do it.
Yeah.
Because he's got time.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. To texture ideas
Patterns
for
and tile
just
sets,
patterns that would be the basis, and we're just adding this in now. We should show. Is that in here?
No, but I can throw it in real quick.
Yeah.
Throw it over.
Yeah, check it in.
Yeah.
So here's something that you don't think too much about. So there's a schematic that we've got here. There's a second view where you're looking at everything, and this is a map. And the problem is, and this becomes a UI. This becomes like a graphic design sort of thing, where it's like we have so many states for the room, even without having a lot of states. Like let's say the state for a room is like it's powered or it's not. You've explored it, like AKA scanned it or not, and then maybe it could flood with radiation. And so immediately you have, 2 states, and then those can all overlap on top of each other, right? And so that makes it that...
Yeah, go to the next slide. You'll see even more.
Yeah, so this is even more rooms. I guess we could zoom in a little bit on this stuff.
I think it was even the next one beyond this, where I tried overlaying everything at once. There you
go. Yeah. So here we go. So let's take a quick look at this stuff. So you've got, here's a room, everything at once. So I think we decided that we were trying to fit everything within the interior of the room. Like this is unpowered. This was powered. And then we have transporter signals. So sometimes you have a transporter and you can beam down to certain rooms and the signal is strong in that room. So we decided rather than putting that as a symbol in the middle, which we originally done, I don't know, I was farting around and I was like, wait a minute, what if we put like a rectangle on the outside of it? Because we have gaps in between the rooms. And so that's what this blue highlight sort of is, and then in the corners, I think. And then we need the room number, and you need the drone number, and you need all the things within the room, and all that stuff. And this is, you can transport into it. It's been explored because it has a grid on it. It's not powered because it's gray. It's red-lined because radiation is flooding into it. So this is like, this is where it's happening. Yeah. This is the party room.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can imagine, like, it just seems like such a simple problem. It's like, oh, we just need squares for rooms and things in them. And then all of a sudden you start to really appreciate people that make schematics.
Yeah. It's the kind of problem I like.
It's cool. It's a cool problem, but
it's
tricky.
Yeah.
It's definitely tricky.
It does get a little frustrating.
Oh, so this is the new, so if any of you guys have seen me play or have played the latest version of the game, the swap interface currently, when you pilot your drone up to a destroyed drone, you can swap upgrades with it, and this is a big part of the scavenging in the game. And right now, it is a crappy Unity UI where you drag things from one side to the other. So we were trying to think of how we could make a friendly-ish UI that could be driven by keyboard.
Yeah.
And this is what we kind of came up with.
It's first pass.
First pass.
Yeah.
So this is your drone on the left, and this is the other drone on the right, and it's got 3 slots each. And the idea is that there's a highlighted, there's a highlight state there's a sort of selected state, and then a highlight state for basically your cursor, right? So you can see here that the area sensor and the empty slot, if you hit enter right now, or space according to this, these two would swap. So you can imagine you can go down to 3, and then you'd hit right, and you'd jump over to this column, and maybe go to 1, and then hit space, and it would swap those two.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is to make it even faster for all you supers out there. We could have these numbered like 1, 2, 3, and this could be numbered A, B, C, and you could hit 1A, enter. So 1 would select this, A would select this, then enter would swap them.
That's a good idea.
All right. And then I also think, to be even more crazy about it, a lot of times what I do is I have a drone that's just sort of empty, and I go up and I just want to grab everything, and so it could be that you could hit A, enter, and if there's an empty slot, it will just move it in.
Oh, yeah.
So you could be like A, enter, B, enter, C, enter, and maybe A, B, C, enter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like all of these things.
yeah, so this is kind of like the Linux nerd in me that's always like, because as soon as you start doing commands, you're like with opening the doors, it used to be that we would type in like open door 1, and then it became open D1, and then it became O, and then it would complete to open D1, and now it's just D1.
Yeah.
And that just toggles them. So it's like, you know, as you play a game that's command line interface, you want these things to be kind of better. Yeah.
So I threw old ideas, old versions.
I do love this because this reminds me of, I don't know if you guys used to play like Privateer and I don't even know if it was in Privateer or X-Wing or any of those games, but like I feel like they had things like this where they would have like because it was sexy to have like 3D rendered models and stuff like that, they would have that, but they would only have like one model, so like you would see this on maps and stuff like that, and that's what the vibe that it kind of gives me, which I dig. And then also, I'm very cognizant of the outlines of these things, because when you quickly want to identify, like right now in my mind, like squares equal derelict ships I can explore, and circle equals this, which I know is something I have to transport down to, and this thing is probably, is that a Stargate?
I don't remember.
I don't even know. But anyway, the point is that I can quickly look and be like, square, square, square. Those are the main things I'm going after because I don't have a transporter. And then eventually I can use this. But these, you know, just visually those outlines really help. So I think we're still going to probably try to incorporate those. Yeah, and this is an older versions of the final one.
Yellow. Blue.
Right. So you move that thing over, right?
Yeah, if you go
this is an experiment. We'll see if I can reopen it and if it'll still.
DCS will automatically.
It did, yay! So now.
Go back. There we go.
Yay. So this is brand new. As you can, if you guys have seen me play the game, it's basically I don't know, like there's nothing there.
Programmer art.
It's programmer art. It's just a square, and I put like a really crappy grid texture on there that gets stretched. And so this is us trying to, or this is Brennan, trying to just use some normal maps and some textures to be like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm driving along this thing, and it looks a little bit more interesting. What's up, sir? Just wrapping up our little stream. Gregor Ice, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, hi. I'll come back, but have fun.
So this is just real quick. This is just, you know, instead of just being the plain floor that we have and everything, all of a sudden it looks like we're actually going through a derelict ship. And for hopefully not too much of a price to pay on that one. And we can vary this up and make ships have different feels to them and make
different rooms on ships have
different
feels.
Rooms have different feels and then different ships. So it might be like this is a military ship and I can tell, or it might be like this is the engine room of a military ship and I can tell. And I want that to go into your strategy. I want you to be like, hey, this is a military ship, so maybe I'll do a different build. Like when I'm going to bring down a and this is less art and more design, but I want it to be like I'm going to bring down an interface upgrade because military ships generally have ship defenses on them, and I can access those and blow away the bad guys. Whereas, like, if it was a different kind of ship, I might be like, there's not as many terminals on those and not many ship defenses, so I'm not going to bother bringing that upgrade down. Like when I choose my build, if you will, my fleet build. But yeah, but it is just about time. So if anybody has any last second questions, we can answer them. Otherwise, I know for the mega booth we got to sign out, and yeah, I got a meeting, so I got to kind of sign out. But thank you guys for stopping by. Hope that was kind of cool, and I'm gonna post this to YouTube later, maybe tomorrow, and so you can feel free to comment on that stuff too.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for spending an hour with us today, talking
means.
some Duskers and some bad decisions you've made in your life and stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks.
The full.
It's great to talk.